Don't everybody talk at once.
Oh, I'm scrambling to make it. What's the name of Jordan Sly is kicking now for the not? Who's the Colts?
You talking about who the kickers are?
No, I'm trying to search their name I'm trying to build a quick fantasy cruncher group.
Michael Badgley.
Oh, that's right. The Money Badger.
After the L.
The Money Badger.
Yeah, Sly's on a different team now.
Oh, that's it.
Wait,
Joey Sly's.
Sly's on this team.
Yeah, he
Or at least he's on our board. This is how much I care about kickers.
All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on Sunday night, a little NFL live before lock. If you had a rough main slate, join the crowd. The chalk, well, it was washed away, much like sidewalk chalk, like tears in the rain. Terry, you know what that quote is being appropriated from. Can you name that movie?
Blade Runner?
Blade Runner. There you go. Good one. Nick has no idea what we're talking about at all.
Yeah, that
movie
must be old.
There was a new one like 2 years ago. You might.
The new Blade Runner. Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
I haven't seen the new one, but yeah, no idea what you guys are talking about.
Or the old one. All right.
All
cool.
right. Well,
New one was actually pretty good. Dennis Villeneuve, the guy who did the new Dune, which I haven't watched yet, but I heard it's interesting.
There we are. Yeah. Well, we have an interesting game here. A little bit of a scramble here. I was trying to get stuff ready. I was starting to build some groups. I don't really think it matters with the rain, the low-scoring game, and pretty much everything else. I really don't feel the need to pair my pass catchers with quarterbacks or vice versa in this game. That's going to be interesting. I am limiting still to 2 kickers and defenses combined of the pool of 8. I can have up to 2, but we're looking at 20 to 30 mile an hour winds, gale force winds. And then also tonight, it's supposed to be heavy rain through the entire game. I don't know if you've looked at dark sky or not, Terry, but I looked at old weather.com and it was a wave of green and then some yellow and then some orange and then some green and then some dark green and then some orange. It doesn't look good out there tonight.
Yeah, it sure doesn't. I just pulled up dark sky and I've never really seen it quite like this. It's just like a big sideways blob of like orange and yellow. I can't really figure it out. It might be a typhoon. I think that's what they're called when it's a Pacific Ocean one, but it's not good. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun to play football in weather like this. I don't think it's going to be fun to play DFS with weather like this, but it should be interesting at least. I actually didn't even talk about the weather at all when I wrote my article with the optimizer picks and everything. I just go by the numbers and that's what I'm trying to stick to. So speculating on the weather is like, it's such guesswork for me that I don't know.
So here's what we want to do with the weather. We're acknowledging it. We have mediocre offenses, mediocre at best. The defenses slightly above mediocre, but not by much. They're both missing some key people. The San Francisco defense nowhere near what it has been the last couple of years. But this one, we don't know what's going to happen. And that's the hard part. But all it takes is one broken play, one missed coverage, one breaking through into the secondary. You know, Debo takes a 7-yard slant and all of a sudden somebody falls down or he breaks through the linebackers and he's off to the races in the secondary. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, well, we knew he was going to have 110 yards and 6 catches and a score. We don't know what's going to happen. So don't let that overly influence you. Because the other thing is if we lean into that too much, the entire field does that. And then
Mhm.
wait, don't we want to go the other direction? So I think we just kind of play it neutral for this one. We acknowledge that it's going to be a low scoring game and we build from there. The other thing that's interesting is we saw something similar on Thursday Night Football where there were not that many touchdowns. What was there? 3 total touchdowns and field goal or something like that. So, or 2 field goals. It wasn't an exciting game at all. But if you captured those touchdowns in your lineup, you did quite well. And they didn't necessarily come from the obvious places. I don't think that there's really going to be obvious touchdowns tonight. We're going to talk about the 49ers. They're going to have multiple running backs. We're going to talk about the Colts, who just are a whole lot of meh. And maybe we look at Jonathan Taylor, but once you hear about his snap count, you may go running the other direction. It's going to be a fun one tonight. So use it as that. There is money to be made. There's also money to be lost. Keep your powder dry. See what I did there with the weather. Be smart about this one, but have some fun, because if you go off the beaten path, which is what we generally preach doing in a lot of our showdown contests, you're going to be different than the field. And if it works out your way, things will be good. Anything to add to that, Terry? I know you wrote your leverage column. You like to look at some of the historical data, stuff like that. Any nuances? Should the weather dramatically drive us one way or the other in this one?
So we can look into that a little bit. Yeah, it's similar to what we saw on Thursday. We gain a little bit. It's a 42-point total. That game was a 40-point total that was just kind of a total outlier. There were only a handful of games that compared. I went within 2 points on either side of the 42-point total tonight. So we got a set of 24 games to look at. The most consistent trend I've seen throughout looking at this 2+ year sample throughout this season for showdowns is you basically always want to have a quarterback. Now, we can argue about whether or not the weather is going to apply to that in this specific game. But once again, I saw the same trend in this one. 20 out of the 24 winning lineups included at least one quarterback in a flex role at least. 8 of the 20 lineups that had a quarterback had both quarterbacks in it. 3 of those lineups were a quarterback captain with his opponent in a flex. Quarterbacks won as captains 5 times out of the 24. So quarterbacks are pretty much consistently more effective in the flex role on DK, and you pretty much always want to have one, particularly when you've got a skill player in the captain spot. If you get to a defense captain, which in this format with this kind of a spread and this kind of a point total is viable, then maybe you can sacrifice the QB. Sometimes you see it with running backs, but it's not that frequent. Even when running backs are in there, you kind of want to have the QBs, at least one of them. Sometimes it's the opposing, sometimes it's the correlated. That doesn't really trend, but always having one trends pretty effectively. We saw a few defenses 3 times out of the 5 total in the 2+ year sample that defense captains have won. 3 of them were in this kind of conditions. All 3 of those were 5-1 builds with the favorite toward the defense's captain's team. So that was something to consider there. Let's see. Defenses were in the flex spot 10 times in the winning lineup, but only one of those included both defenses. So maybe we want to consider not rostering both defenses. Kind of trends out 10 out of 24. Kickers weren't that viable, but I think in this format, again, they're going to be pretty viable. They only came up in the flex rolls 6 times out of 24 entries, so not quite as viable. And then the most consistent captain winner in this kind of a format is running backs, as you would think probably kind of tracks toward low scoring game, somewhat tightly contested on the Vegas board. So we see a lot of running back captains win, and it mixes in with a lot of even builds, 4-2s or 3-3s in that format. A lot to chew on there.
That is. And even then we can go against the grain, because remember on this very same show last Sunday, I said I was building my cash lineups and not using either quarterback. I went that route. Hat tip to DJ Dallas, 25 and 7 in my head-to-head. So we'll get us up to 100 likes. We'll drop in some DK $1 head-to-heads in the lobby. I am team free money. I don't always win. Oftentimes I lose. So you'll definitely want to get in there. Nick, I hope you're ready to talk. We've just been keeping you warming up the pipes in the background there, getting ready to come out here for your big solo performance. We're going to move over to Yahoo. We're going to build a lineup there. And this is something that we've done a little differently with our shows. We're going to build lineups on Yahoo, FanDuel, DraftKings, and then we're going to break down the various PrizePicks offerings that are available. We'll answer some questions, but we've been talking a lot of strategy here and gotten a lot of good feedback on it. So we're going to continue doing that. But in the meantime, is there anything you wanted to call out in particular for this game from a high level before you make your first selection of who goes in our Yahoo lineup?
Yeah, we were talking a lot about running backs, and we didn't mention at all my guy, Kerryon Johnson, who did so well for us that first week that we did this. So shout out to Kerryon Johnson, even though he's not even playing in this game. Shout out to him. He was on the 49ers at that time. But yeah, we're going to have a great time tonight, and I'm very excited about this game. I am slightly worried about the weather, though, based upon what I have looked at. But again, I'm not a weatherman, so I'm not going to tell you exactly how things are going to turn out because we talked a lot about the weather in the Bills-Chiefs game a couple of weeks ago, and it basically had no impact until the second half of the game. So you never really know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Did either of you guys pull numbers just to put numbers on anything? Or did either of you guys look into numbers about, weather and impact or wind at a certain rate or anything like that? I haven't. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there if either you happen to have. If not, we can move on.
So typically it needs to be sustained winds above 20 miles an hour before it starts to impact things. And a lot of that needs to be on the field. So if you get someplace like Seattle where they have that open end of part of their stadium looking towards the downtown, it's not completely open, but the wind acts differently there than say it would in other places. We bring out, Oracle Park for baseball. Hey, in San Francisco, it's built for the wind there. So it's really not that big of a deal. I'm not as familiar with, I don't even know what they call the stadium, and Levi Stadium or whatever it is, or used to be called. I'm not as familiar with that area there, but for football, it really, it will affect passes usually of 20 yards or more. Air yards, not, 20 yards in distance.
Right.
The receiver 60 feet away from each other. It starts to affect that if it's sustained winds above 20 miles an hour. If it's gusts, if you throw during a gust, it's going to be a problem. If you throw in there is no gust, then it's not a problem, right? So it's a big variable thing. The other thing that tends to be an issue is heavy rain with wind. That really impacts the kicking game. But I don't think either of these quarterbacks are going to be throwing deep. So I don't think it's as much of a problem. And I think they both want to run anyway. And anything that's going to who's going to say no to more running with either of these coaches? Nothing.
Absolutely.
So if it drives them towards that would be the thing I was thinking. If it was like, a Tom Brady and Tampa offense, okay, maybe we talk something different, but they're going to be smart enough to just use short passes, etc. If it's a dumb coach, then who knows what's going on there.
Yeah.
All right,
and
Nick,
kicking sucks this year anyway, so who wants to play kickers anyway?
Yeah. Well, we do have notes on the kickers, so we will talk about them. What do you got for us, Nick? Half point PPR here on Yahoo. Unique scoring system. It is or not completely a unique salary system. Their scoring system is half PPR. You get 1.5 for your superstar designated player. You play 5 positions, don't matter. And the only other rule you have to have is they don't have kickers. They do have defenses, and you have to play 1 player from each team at a minimum. We have Deebo Samuel at the top at 31, Jonathan Taylor at 29, then the quarterbacks, and then we go into a host of other players here. This is different than what we've seen a lot of the times. We have seen it a few times on these more recent island games or primetime games where it's not the quarterbacks that are at the apex price point here. Salary shouldn't be that much of an issue. What would you like to do here, Nick?
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep it a little bit simple today, not trying to do something a little bit crazy here. We're going to go with Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is just on a tear for the Indianapolis Colts. It seems like they're really going full on with him. They're not trying to use Nyheim Hines as much as they did last season, as much as they did earlier on into the season. I think that it's kind of a no-brainer pick to go with Jonathan Taylor. We saw him tear it up the last couple of games, and I'm very confident that he will look good tonight up against the 49ers again. Try not to overthink it. Keep the obvious play here. We're going to go Jonathan Taylor. I understand his ownership is going to be high, but we're going to keep him here as the superstar. I love Jonathan Taylor tonight.
All right. Tara, you can go next here. Jonathan Taylor is leading off for us.
All right. So I always like to go in different directions when we talk about tournament builds, when we talk about cash games. I like to kind of toe the line with some of these optimal guys. I'm taking a look here at the FanDuel board and just looking at some of the guys who are optimal and seeing how I can cross that over to Yahoo. And if we're thinking about keeping the ball on the ground, that kind of a conversation, maybe we want to look at Mitchell. Maybe we want to change things up though and take a look at somebody who's going to be working out of the air a little bit more. And I just see, he's going to be popular overall, but judging by what we've got on the other sites, Deebo is our most likely to be the top scorer across the board on the other sites. He's coming up with positive leverage for that opportunity. I just think he just kind of makes sense to be a plug and play guy in most of the lineup builds, even if we're not thinking about that much action going through the air, taking their best receiver and kind of plugging him in when we think we can get him at positive leverage, particularly if people are going away from the passing game. I kind of think it makes sense. So I'm going to go another obvious play here. And maybe it's not that obvious. Maybe we get away with something, and I'm going to go with Debo.
All right. I think that's where the real decision point comes down is who do you want in your multiplier spot on all the sites. I think most of us will be leaning towards Jonathan Taylor, but I think Debo Samuel is the other guy that we will want to give strong consideration to. The only concerns we really have with Taylor is he's only playing 50 to 60% of the snaps. Now he's getting the vast majority of the work. In his last 3 games, he's had at least 110 yards combined in each game and scored a touchdown in each game. He has 5 total touchdowns. So Nyheim Hines is the change of pace guy. You've got Marlon Mack. They're still trying to showcase him just a little bit ahead of that trade deadline, not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, November 2nd. So they're hoping they can get a late round draft pick out of him. He's getting 5 to 7 looks per game. A game like this today, I think we're going to see him in there. Nyheim Hines makes me a little nervous. We have Taylor in his last 3 games. Let me get to my notes here. Taylor has 9 targets in his last 3 games. Hines only has 5. While Hines does have 21 targets on the season, they've fallen off over the last 3 weeks. That's very concerning. He does return punts, but I am not a fan of Nyheim Hines on this one. So I really like Taylor. I'm going to recommend we also go with Eli Mitchell as our next one here. So Eli Mitchell, it was the rookie 6th round pick. Trey Sermon was the 3rd round pick. Eli Mitchell is moved ahead of Sermon. Of course, Raheem Mostert is hurt. Make a fun joke here that no one but Terry and I would get, but in drummers and fun movies, but spoof movies. But let's not go down that path because we got stuff to talk about here. So Eli Mitchell, the buy came at the right time. He's going to be back. He's going to be leading the crew here. JaMychal Hasty, I think, is also in play on Yahoo. He's at 13. So the interesting thing about Hasty is he's in his 2nd season. He missed the last 5 weeks, 3 games, 5 weeks with high ankle sprain. So he is also moved ahead of Trey Sermon as well. Now he's a little bit more of a pass catcher than anything else, but almost positive he was undrafted. Done a little bit on special teams. He's just kind of there. But I think he would be the guy I would still move ahead of Trey Sermon. So for me, I want to go with Eli Mitchell in this build. So we've got Taylor, Debo Samuel, and Eli Mitchell. So we'll turn this back over to you, Nick. So now we've got some interesting things to think about. So we have Carson Wentz. While he's not the most sexy option, he has had 17 or more Yahoo fantasy points in 5 games. Of course, he's only had more than 19 in 1 game. Yikes. Very consistent, I guess, consistently boring. We have Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to be under center. He had missed time with his calf injury. Trey, I lose track of all the Trey and Trevor and
Trey Lance.
Lance, thank you. God.
Gotcha.
Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Trey Sermon. Oh boy. Yeah, it's been
so many names.
Okay, boomer. There we go. All right, but Jimmy G's back. He also not very exciting at all. So, but
hey, just to interject, we can't afford Wentz. He's the only player on the board we cannot afford.
Okay, so if we go down that path of looking at those guys, I think we may want one of them in our flex. It sort of makes it easier if we kind of have to go Garoppolo, but I think also in play is going to be Michael Pittman. T.Y. Hilton is out. He missed the beginning of the season with a neck injury, and then he hurt his quad in the last game. So we could see Pascal Siakam. Well, I'm going to cross sports everywhere. Zach Pascal, not to be confused with Paris Campbell, who is on the injured reserve. So you could see Zach Pascal getting back to his role of playing 50, 60% of the snaps. We've got Ross Dwelly, who's going to play 80, 90% of the snaps down there as our cheapies. We've got JaMychal Hasty. Those are our discount options. So you can, as Terry said, you can pick anybody you want aside from Carson Wentz, because that only leaves us $9. If you have strong lean towards Carson Wentz, we can back out of one of our other players if we wanted to.
Okay. Did you guys happen to notice that today was National Tight End Day? They only said it 7,000 times during the every single game. Like literally every time someone scores a touchdown. Oh, did you know it was National Tight End Day? Yeah, I did know. But
and
thank
there
you.
were a lot of tight end touchdowns today on Red Zone. It was just endless with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when they bring up that like some football player, like the quarterback played baseball in high school, like everyone knows already, or basketball or something like that. But with that said, all fun aside, I want to go with Michael Pittman. I think that his role will be a lot stronger this week without T.Y. Hilton. His down game was last week. Besides that, he's getting 7, 8, 12 targets. This guy is the clear number one wide receiver on the Indianapolis Colts. Again, I don't love Carson Wentz as a whole as a quarterback, but he's good enough to feed the ball to Mr. Michael Pittman, and I think he could have quite the showing. My other player that I was kind of thinking about was Ross Dwelly, but maybe that's just National Tight End Day getting into my head.
All right, Terry, we're gonna let you pick the final one. I just have one rule: no Brandon Ayuk. He is 14, but he doesn't even have 100 yards yet on the season. They're not going to throw deep in this game. Just say no to Brandon Ayuk. Although the price is most appealing on Yahoo, just say no. So I think we should look at the San Francisco defense, Pascal or James Hasty or Ross Dwelly. Those would be the ones I think are worthy of our final spot, Terry, but you can select them.
So I was looking at the San Francisco D, and I agree. I don't want to go to Ayuk here, just given the nature of this game and the way our lineup has already come together with a lot of the premium skill players. I don't think it makes sense to take the 5th premium skill player off the board here. It's just kind of going to be a chalky build anyway that a lot of people will probably have. And I don't think it's totally viable for the game script that we're expecting either. So I wouldn't go that way. I don't love the idea of going to the defense. I like the idea of going to the defense in general, but not for this lineup that we've built since it's got the 2 premium skill players from the Colts. So I don't really think we go to the 49ers defense. Similar story with Pascal as it was to Ayuk, which brings us to the tight ends. And I kind of think it makes sense to go to one of the tight ends, given, a lot of short passing expected, a kind of ugly, grindy kind of game. Maybe you pick off that one touchdown of the game and go to a tight end. So I'll go with what Nick was going to say, and I'll go with the Ross Dwelly call, although I do kind of like Mo Alley Cox a lot here as well. $12 and $11. You can afford either one of them. The other thing I do want to chime in with, I was kind of hoping that Nick was going to grab Jimmy Garoppolo with that last pick, which would have left us exactly $10, which would have brought us to the guy that I was going to throw into the mix is in terms of the San Francisco running game. I think a guy who would very easily vulture a touchdown, maybe only see 2 touches the entire game, but both of them at the goal line and vulture a touchdown or 2 is Kyle the Spelling Bee Juszczyk here. I think it makes some sense to look at him. He is active tonight, right? I know you didn't mention him.
He is active.
He is because he's at the bottom of our board.
4 targets in each of the last 3 games. He does have 1 touchdown. Who can forget his moments where he shows up in the playoffs with those random touchdowns in these showdown slates as well. He's very much in play today. I would probably get to about my 7th Yahoo lineup, and he'd be in it at that point. So he's not that far of a reach to be in our lineups tonight.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure because he is at the bottom of our board by probability, right? He gets so few touches that it's not the likeliest play in the world, but it's also in terms of just aggregate ownership, there's not going to be a lot of people there. And I think we can all agree that it's easy to see, right? Nick, you can see a path where he's going to, those two touches both go for touchdowns and he doesn't do anything else, but nobody else does, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Like Eli Mitchell gets pulled at the goal line and out of nowhere, you see him barrel his way on into the end zone. And then we saw it coming. I feel like a lot of people will see that coming, but not enough people are willing to take that risk. So I get that for sure.
Yeah, and especially if we want to go to that Jimmy G pick, that leaves us with that money. Now, it also does have Sanu on the board at that same $10 price, which would then correlate with the Jimmy G pick there. So I think that also would make sense if you wanted to go that route. But I did want to call out the Juszczyk thing there.
All right, we're on to the blue side. Terry, you get to start off here. You are a resident FanDuel expert. FanDuel, of course, similar to Yahoo, they're half PPR. They do have their designated multiplier. It is the MVP on their sites. You do have kickers, but you don't have defense.
Yes, correct. All right, so let's take a look here. We can go by the top scoring, the most optimal. So I'm going to sort by the most optimal captain play on our board here. And I'm going to go away from, I think, what I would probably do if I was just building a few lineups myself. And my first one, I would probably take the guy that I took in Yahoo and go with Debo. But since I did that on Yahoo, I'll go to the second most frequently optimal guy, still getting positive leverage. And I'm going to put Jimmy G at the captain spot. Just kind of see what happens.
All right. Interesting. I like it. I'll allow it because it is your pick. Nick, who would you like to do in the lineup? Next, we have Jimmy G as our top guy.
All right. So looking at this, I do kind of want to go with Deebo Samuel. Obviously, that would make a lot of sense with the correlation. But I'm also thinking potentially about going with Sanu. Sanu was a guy that I didn't expect at all to be very involved in this offense. He hasn't been very involved in any offense over the last couple of years, ever since leaving the Atlanta Falcons. But he does seem like kind of one of those plays that I'm pretty interested in. Last week up against the Cardinals, he had 3 targets. The week before that, 5 and 6. The other games wasn't looking so hot. But as of recently, he's kind of caught a little bit of fire. And maybe if he finds his way into the end zone, I'll be fine with that. So we're going to go with Mohamed Sanu. Definitely a little bit different, in my opinion. I don't think a lot of people will be on him.
All right. We could see a national tight end day. We got to talk about how Mohamed Sanu can throw touchdown passes because, we're obligated to do that. We did see some non-traditional passes today. So perhaps that will continue. I'm looking. I think I kind of want to go a little chalk donkey here. I think I want to go with Jonathan Taylor still. So if we put him in, that still gives us $12,000 per player. We have a very discounted Kyle Juszczyk, who probably, if he gets in the end zone, would be at the behest of Jimmy Garoppolo there. We've got Michael Pittman in that $12,000 range, Eli Mitchell in the $11,000 range. So there's all sorts of ways we can go. We've got 12,000 per player left. Terry, we'll run this one back to you. Or would you like the last pick?
Yeah, let me take the last pick.
All right, Nick, we'll let you run with this one.
All right. So I want to go ahead and get Michael Pittman. Again, we kind of talked about him a decent amount already. I really like Michael Pittman this week. I think last week, the reason why he didn't play as well, it seemed like the offense was really focusing on giving the ball to T.Y. Hilton, who had a good game, but as per usual, he's hurt. So now we got Michael Pittman here in a very solid spot for success. So I like Michael Pittman a lot tonight, and I'll continue to keep rehashing that. As long as it's my pick in these things, we're going with Michael Pittman Jr.
That works out. All right, Terry, we're automatically going to be leaving $1,000 on the board. We do have some wiggle room here if we would like. I think a lot of these players are relatively similar other than Eli Mitchell, who I would put a little bit ahead of most of these other players here. There is a potential symmetry or synergy there with Mitchell and Jimmy G, not a ton. But I also wouldn't hate if we ended up going and leaving even more money on the table, depending on how contrarian you'd like to get.
And sorry, who was our third pick? Your pick?
Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan
It was
Taylor.
Taylor. Okay. All righty. Let me just pop him in there and I'll take a look. I know we've got money to spend, but just looking at how it all comes together here. I mean, we can't get Deebo at 13. We've got 12 to work with. I don't really love the other pass catchers there. So it's not really going to be that route that I want to go.
Would you flip Jonathan Taylor for Wentz and Deebo to be able to do that? Because I would not hate that either.
I feel like that gets us really chalky. I feel like 12,000 people are going to have that lineup. Okay. just thinking about it. It seems a little chalky for me. It'd be weird to go with both Taylor and Nyheim Hines, but I think that's kind of interesting. Just as an oddball kind of a build. Don't necessarily want to do it. I think the most logical pick here is probably Eli Mitchell, but I think that also is going to be somewhat of a chalky build. It leaves 1,000 on the table, so we gain from that. We gain from going to Sanu as kind of an offbeat receiver play to correlate with Jimmy. I don't love that either, though. I think if I was building it, I would probably look toward – I might stick like Zach Pascal in here at 10. I might stick Nyheim Hines in here at 8 and do the wacky build with both running backs from Indianapolis. Or I might just look to one of the tight ends and just leave a boatload of salary on the table and hope that I can pick off the touchdown. So since we went Dwelly the other time, I'm just going to go with Mo Alley Cox here. And I'm going to leave a whole bunch of money on the table.
All right. So you guys can play along with that one at home. I'm going to put this in just because I want to see how it does. Wow. 4,500 on the table. That's a lot, but no one else is going to do that. So we're just going to light some money on fire here.
But Dad, tell me that lineup can't win, though. I mean, we've got if Jimmy throws a touchdown to Sanu, that lineup can easily win.
Exactly. And I was going to point out about Mo Alley Cox in the last 3 games. He has 3 total touchdowns. He has 2 touchdowns 2 weeks ago. And then last week he had 1 touchdown. So he's a guy I could easily see scoring. So I really do like that pick, Terry.
Yep. And the other thing, even though Doyle's playing the most snaps, he only has 1 target each of the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, they've been throwing the ball to Mo a lot more.
It's been a little odd from that standpoint. All right, we're going to go on over here to DraftKings. So get those likes up. I'll drop my cash lineup into the chat. Get us up to 125. We got 1,200 of us watching. We can get to 125. Come on, that's easy way to go. Couple things
And
I
if we
do want to
don't-
mention. We are sponsored by PrizePicks. If you use the promo code Awesemo when you make your first deposit, they will give you or match you up to $100. That comes out of your account first and into the contest. We'll talk about some of their picks after we break down a little bit more of the DraftKings build here. The other thing I wanted to remind everybody is tomorrow is the last day to utilize promo code Curry, which gets you 1 full week of all access, Awesemo premium content, all sports, all everything for half price. So you get that for $14.98. It's like $2 a day. You get everything. Definitely want to recommend that. That one's going away, but you've been sitting here saying, I want to see this stuff. You guys only do one free tool a day, and it's not the one I like. But because this is a paid service, you got to pay. But here we're giving you half off. This is a fantastic deal. Check it out. That's promo code Curry. It's not just basketball. You get everything on this. So, but if you go to awesemo.com/promo, you can find that there. You click on the link, it'll preload the pass or the promo code in there for you when you sign up, or you can type it in yourself. Curry, as in Seth, not Steph. Seth. All right.
Love it.
DK, Nick, this is your bailiwick. Take us through the DK lineup build.
All righty. Shout out to DK. I actually won some money for once playing DFS, so shout out to DraftKings. All right, so today we are going to go ahead and go in our captain spot. Did I already do captain once? Shouldn't you get the captain then?
No, I'm being benevolent.
Oh,
I may
how
overrule
kind of you.
things, but
How kind of you. We're to go with Deebo Samuel this time.
good call. Good
I
call.
love Deebo. Deebo, I mean, like Brandon Ayuk is just so stuck in the doghouse. Like we thought he was getting out, but just his nose escaped, just the little snout. He's still stuck in there. There's no way he's getting out. It's Deebo Samuel. It's always Deebo Samuel. I mean, he's just so good. Like, what is there to really say about him except for how great he's been this season and how much of a surprise it has been that he has been the clear alpha guy there week in and week out. So I love Deebo Samuel, and I think we got to get him in our captain spot.
Yep. So I went and looked it up. He actually has carries in each of the last 4 games, starting with week 2, 2 for 8, 2 for nothing, 1 for 1, 1 for 13, and a touchdown last week. This feels like he could be in the mix in the red zone or at some other point, depending on how the weather is playing out here. We mentioned that he's very good at breaking tackles. He also has solid speed. He's like a a different version of DK Metcalf, in my opinion. Similar playing styles, not quite the same build, but similar skill set and results. So I'm good with that. Terry, would you like to go next?
Sure, I can do that. And let me pop back over to the old lineup builder here. And I will put Deebo in the captain spot. That was my favorite captain play on DK as well. He's our top guy on the board. Again, he's getting positive leverage on the DK slate in the captain spot, as well as in the util spot. So I think he's just excellent across the board. But yeah, he's definitely one of the go-to plays on the site. I think it just kind of makes sense if you want to talk about some correlation here to grab Jimmy G. We talked about how important quarterbacks are in the flex role in the DraftKings Showdown, pretty much regardless of format, regardless of how the games go. Even if you look down, a lot of those games do include games that were totaled out to a high degree, and maybe it was bad weather. I don't have that history, but whatever impacted the game, they went way under. You still see the quarterbacks being an important play there. So I'm just going to go with the correlated guy with our captain here and go with Jimmy G.
All right, I just dropped in 15 because I'm feeling like giving away the money tonight. 15 DK head-to-head lineups. Username EMAC. They're down there in the $1 contests. Enjoy. Be gentle. Be kind. Be kind to your fellow people. All right, so now I've got to get. Sorry, I closed out the wrong window. So let me open this up. So you're going Jimmy G. Do we go with a Carson Wentz in this one, looking to be a little bit more unique? If we go here with Wentz, it could be kind of interesting just from the standpoint of maybe we don't go Taylor and we're looking to be unique from that route. I'm kind of leaning towards Wentz. What say you guys on that?
Yeah, I like that. We see it, in the historical sample frequently enough, and we see just in terms of where we've got these guys projected, how frequently they're coming up optimal. I think it makes a lot of sense to just stick both of them in there. And again, we're not trying to sit here and play weatherman. We're not trying to predict the weather. These guys are both above 40% in our optimal lineup appearance rate in the flex roll. That's enough for me.
All right, so we're going to go back to Nick here. This is where we can consider the kickers. It's the money badger is kicking now for Indianapolis because Blankenship went on the injured list. And then Joey Sly was cut and then picked up to replace, or cut by another team, picked up to replace Robbie Gould, who is on the injured reserve as well. So those are our kickers tonight. We've got we could get fun here with like a Marlon Mack. We've got Juszczyk down there. We've got the kickers, as I mentioned. Dwelly's in the mix. What are you liking from our options here? Maybe a Zach Pascal to get a pass catcher there with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up, we don't have to pick Marlon Mack, but he was a guy that I kind of wanted to talk about this whole time.
Yep.
I just didn't really have a good chance to bring it up. I find it very interesting how his usage is on this team because it seems like the team wants to trade him. That's what keeps coming out. And they keep giving him like 5, 6, 7 runs every single game. And he plays quite well. So I'm kind of interested that way, but there's no real way, in my opinion, that he scores. At least I wouldn't think so. I think Jonathan Taylor would be in near the goal line. So we can go with Zach Pascal again when there is an injury to another wide receiver on the team. That's going to move Zach Pascal up the pecking order. And now he's the clear number 2 wide receiver behind Michael Pittman. And I think his upside is pretty high in this game. He hasn't scored too many touchdowns this season. Of course, he only has 3, but that's good enough for me. I like him this week. Had a down game last week up against the Texans, but again, so did a lot of the team because they were going to T.Y. Hilton. So I expect Zach Pascal to be back on the saddle here and play pretty well.
All right, Terry, it is up to you. I kind of like, if we go James Hasty, you can pick anybody from 5,600 down. Unless you have a lean on somebody else. I was trying to find a weird one there. If you would like to go with the weird one, that is fine. We've got Ross Dwelly that we kind of mentioned before. That would kind of leave us picking from Hasty, Sanu, Marlon Mack. At that point, we're going to leave money on the table because those guys all have about the same type of projection. So it's more preference at that point rather than not using all of our salary cap. What would you like to do with our final 2 spots here?
I tell you what, it definitely would be weird to go with 56-year-old retired cornerback James Hasty, but JaMychal
Did I
Hasty,
say James Hasty?
You did.
So I've been playing fantasy basketball long enough. My very first team had Del Curry on it and Winston Garland. Yes, that would be the dads of Steph and Darius Garland. So.
Does your first fantasy football lineup have Ed McCaffrey in it too?
No, it had Jerry Rice.
Okay.
Farther back.
So what that tells us is this man knows his 49ers. So let's pay attention to what he says today. Bringing it back to tonight's slate. Yeah, looking at it, I mean, we can go Hasty here. We haven't used him yet. I think it makes some sense from a lot of the things that we've talked about in terms of that running game, in terms of the nature of this game kind of being on the ground. So I'll go with that. Save us a little bit of money. Now you get to play with $5,800, Max. So what are you looking at?
So this is kind of an interesting one. I think I would probably lean towards Mo Alley Cox on this one. If it's because we already have Hasty. So we got to figure that one weird touchdown is all the Niners are going to get. It's going to go to Hasty, Sanu, or Juszczyk, right? There's not, or maybe Dwelly's not quite weird, but it would be, I figured the touchdowns are going to go to the running backs or to Deebo Samuels. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really excited by the kickers. None of them have familiarity nor in the weather with the stadium. So I think I'd like to go Mo Alley Cox. I don't want to go with Nyheim Hines. He's just not getting the workload. I think that's a bit of a problem here. So I think Mo Alley Cox is where I would like to go. We'll leave 600 on the table.
I like it. So Deebo and the captain, Jimmy G, Carson Wentz, Pascal Hasty, and Mo Alley Cox leaving $600 on the table. That works.
All right. So we've got 26 minutes to go here. Woo-hoo. We're going to talk a little bit about PrizePicks. You guys can follow along. I will drop into our Slack the link to my run sheet so you guys can see what we're looking at there. And we got some picks here. So how PrizePicks works is basically it's fantasy prop wagering. So you choose your own card. You have to pick 2, 3, 4, or 5 of their questions. You go over or under. We understand the basics there. They're not static lines. They will move. And we are playing against PrizePicks, not against other gamers here. So it's very much like prop wagering. Where it's a little different is they have them across the board. Where it's different for fantasy sports, they have them across the board. They have them for regular statistical categories. They have them for fantasy points. Most weekdays they have between 8 and 14 different sports that you can choose from. You can do cross sport player cards here and have a lot of fun. They've done a couple unique things. They do have single game contests. The only rule is you can only pick a player once per card, which makes it so if you really like a bunch of the James or Jonathan Taylor, obviously James Taylor. Well, let's go singer songwriters from the 60s for 1,000, Alex. We've got you can only pick one of his. So that makes it a little bit interesting, but you can also get a little creative. If you think it's going to be a high scoring game or a low scoring game, you can correlate with some of your picks. If you think you're going Brady on the over, maybe you want to have a pass catcher or two of his in that card, right? That would be an example for this one. So we have the weather tonight. We may have some unders that we want to look at. This one is one of the more unique ones that I've seen tonight, Terry and Nick, because their numbers were almost right on. Now I pulled these 1 hour before the show, so they may have changed just a little bit, but these numbers were for PrizePicks are for a lot of these are very, very similar to the Awesemo projections. And that's something we haven't seen a lot lately. Usually we get a little wiggle room here and there, but the passing yards for Jimmy G and Wentz literally were within 2 yards of the Awesemo projections. They're both right around 200. So there's no real advantage on that. That doesn't mean these are bad picks. Perhaps you have a lean on how the game will go and you're going to play the over or the under. Those look like low numbers, but if you go look at these guys' game logs, these are not really low numbers for passing totals here. So that one's not as exciting. We've got rushing yards where we have a couple interesting ones here. So we have Jonathan Taylor. He was at, let's see. Oh, his has moved up. He was at 65 earlier this afternoon. He's now at 70.5 rushing yards. Awesemo has him at 70.6. We've got Elijah Mitchell. His has gone down a little bit. He was at 62. He's at 60 now. Awesemo's projecting him for just under 70. So that would be one I would like to look at. And then we've got Deebo Samuel. What do you guys think about this? 3.5 yards. Awesemo's projecting him for 11. It's more or less, is he going to lose yards on the one carry he gets, or will he get 2? We've already seen him have 2 in one game where he got 0 yards. So this is not a gimme by any chance, but is that one you guys would feel confident going on the over? And then every time the Niners have the ball, you're on the edge of your seat.
I would be pretty interested in it. Would I take it? That's the bigger question right there. Because, I mean, if you're looking back at it last week up against the Cardinals, he had 1 rush for 13 yards. Week before that, 1 rush for 1 yard, then 2 rushes for nothing, and then 2 rushes for 8 yards. So it is entirely possible that he hits it. I'm not necessarily looking towards that, but I do find it very interesting. What do you think, Terry?
I'm taking a look at my stats board here. I'm seeing a guy who gets 1.2 rushing attempts per game and turns in 3.7 yards per rushing attempt. I'm going to go with the over. I think it makes sense. We're just squeaking by. Like Emax said, it's going to be a fun one when he gets that 1 carry and you see whether he gets over the line there. But yeah, I like it. And looking at Alex's board at 3.5 at a negative 105 on the prop odds, he's got that with a 73% expected win and a 42% expected ROI. So that's a solid bet. It's a squeaker, but it's a solid bet.
All right. Now that's where it gets a little tricky because Deebo's in a couple others. So we'll bring these up now. So again, these lines do move. They're down to 64 or 60.5 yards for Deebo receiving. They were at 64 earlier. Awesemo still, I think, has him just over 80 yards. That may be a little bit aggressive with the weather, but that's still a decent enough gap ahead of, 67 yards per game averages out to 1,000-yard season.
Yeah.
Before they had 17 game seasons, but so it's just kind of putting it in a perspective. I mean, it's not a lot, but it adds up over the course of the year. I would like that probably the over on Deebo's yards. We also have Deebo. He was at 5.5 receptions. He is still at 5.5. We have him for 7 or just shy of 7. Would you guys lean towards one of those more or less than the rushing ones, or we could create a second card and play one of these?
So for me, just if I'm thinking about prize picks, I might go with one that I think is probably more logical in the receiving yards over, because the way it comes down on our board when I'm looking at Alex's betting board, it's a negative 115 bet, but you get it it's a 57.5 line. So it did come down. So we've got it as a 73% win expectancy. And at a negative 115, it's a 36% ROI. So I think if I'm making a wager at a sports book, I might go with the other one. I think that's the more fun one to go with as well. And it was a more positive, higher ROI. And then if I'm making the prize picks pick, I think I might go with this one since they're about the same expectancy for the win. I think this one just feels a little bit more logical since it did come down. So I think I'd probably go with it that way. So two different answers for me. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I was thinking the receiving yards as well. I think it's entirely possible that the receiving yards hit while the receptions don't end up hitting, in my opinion, because I don't think it takes all that many receptions for him to eclipse that total. So I definitely lean the receiving yards. I feel a lot safer with the receiving yards, especially on a site like PrizePicks.
I like it.
All right. Looking at some of our other ones here, going back to the rushing. Oh, we finished the rushing yards. Going back to the receiving yards, they did not have Michael Pittman on the board when I did it, but they now have him there at 44.5. We have him for just over 50. Nick, you had a bit of a lean there on Pittman. Do you think he can get over 44.5?
Yeah, I definitely do. Unless, of course, this is a complete and utter monsoon, like maybe we were talking about earlier, but I don't really project that again. Not a weatherman. I do expect him to easily pass that total.
Right. And on the weather, we don't know exactly what's going to happen during the game. I mean, our last weather game, I was relatively cavalier. Terry was saying it was going to rain. I was listening to some of the DFS weathermen and say, oh, no, there's a great window here. And then they paused the game for a while because of lightning. And while it wasn't incredible rain, it was enough that it would have impacted things. But we didn't know that. And arguably our better source that was looking at it out there on the interwebs went the other direction. We don't know what's going to happen in here. You could get the crazy microburst over the stadium, or it could miss the stadium by a couple miles. We don't know that. So that's the tricky part here. So there are no victory laps on this weather. It is just yet another variable ramped up to 11. I'll take Goofy Movies for 600, Alex. We're going to turn it up. No, but this goes to 11, Terry. Spinal Tap. Come on. You got it.
You dropped two Spinal Tap references on me in short succession.
Well, because I can't tell him to Nick. He's just going to be like, oh.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means.
What do I do? Do I politely chuckle or do I pretend I just didn't hear? Okay. Either one.
I would have got there. I was just going through in my head. Is that Bill and Ted? Is that the Back to the Future when he turns the thing up? There's a lot of scenes where guys are turning amps up and stereos up and stuff. You know?
All right. We have receiving yards. Jonathan Taylor's has gone down from 14.5 to 12.5. Interesting. I think I'd rather play with the rushing yards there, but 12.5. That seems like doable. With 2 catches, he gets there.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think it is pretty doable, but I would also rather take the rushing yards. It is entirely possible that Nyheim Hines magically gets injected back into this game. You never really know. So, and if that is the case, I don't think Jonathan Taylor sees all that much work in the receiving game. He's getting about 1 or 2 targets every single game, or much over that, actually. 1 or 2 receptions every single game is what I meant to say. So I think it's entirely possible that he hits that. Obviously, he got 116 or something crazy like that up against the Baltimore Ravens in that primetime game a couple of weeks ago. But I'm much more inclined to go with the rushing yards, like you said.
Yeah. Speaking of any given Sunday, would anybody have thought that Cincinnati would beat the hell out of Baltimore that convincingly today? I certainly.
What a win for them. Yeah.
They certainly did.
Yeah,
not.
Big spot too. I mean, that was a meaningful game and a meaningful win for them. So kudos to them. But yeah, I tell you what too, it was one where it frustrated me through the day because there were 4 or 5 times through the morning where I'm hand building stuff and then looking through Fantasy Cruncher and everything after I finished my article, and I was just sitting there saying, wow, that's Burrow. Something about Burrow today. Something about that receiving core, and just I didn't go to it enough, and it just if I had it might have been a different story for my Sunday. Just one of those frustrating ones.
I had sorry. I was going to say I had the Jamar Chase touchdown, and I was waiting all game for that bet to hit. All game. It took so long, and it finally hit. So I was very happy with that.
Not bad.
So there's our little segue. We also can pick touchdowns here. We'll talk fantasy points next, but rushing touchdowns, Jonathan Taylor is at 1/2 of a touchdown. So either this is a yes or a no. Awesemo has him for about a 46% chance of a touchdown in this game. That would be one I'd be willing to take the over on. for that. Fantasy points gets a little interesting. So I want to see if these changed at all since I pulled these. They have. So Carson Wentz went from 15 down to 14. So the things you want to know, it's not going to matter today, but they do full PPR and they have basically the same scoring as DraftKings for the quarterback, but no milestone bonuses for 300 yards or 100 yards rushing or receiving. So you need to back those out of the Awesemo projections if you're looking at that. But clearly neither of these guys is going to be having that in there. So Carson Wentz is kind of like a push here on Awesemo at 14. Do you guys, this feels like I'd rather take a chance on him in my flex spot. There's no points. There's no style points when I'm going one-on-one with somebody else here and they've set the line and it's a good one. That could be a stay away for us. Do you guys have a lean on that? And then Jimmy G's dropped from 16 to 15. Awesemo has him right around that number as well.
Yeah, for me, I'd kind of be riding with Alex's numbers. I didn't project this game myself, but typically I'm in, generally within a point or so of Alex's numbers. And in this case, that's an important point. I don't want to, not mention that, but yeah, I think I would be under on this one as well. Alex has him a little bit under that mark. And just with everything we've talked about with this game, why would we go away from the narrative of this being an ugly passing situation at this point? So I'll go with the under, and I would do that on both QBs, I think.
All right, let's see what else we have. 15 minutes left here. We'll have time for some questions. We've got Deebo Samuels. He is down to 15. Awesemo has him for we've moved down to 19. Remember it's full PPR, but we also get touchdowns. You get everything on this one. So that's yet another one that's kind of interesting for Deebo Samuels. We have Brandon Ayuk. He was at 10. He's dropped all the way down to 8.
Oh man.
I liked him at 10, taking the under. 8's a little harder to stomach on that one, just because he is, one of the receivers out there that should be playing a fair number of snaps. He may be running wind sprints. How do you guys feel about Ayuk down to 8 now?
It would be hard to kind of just plug your nose and do it, but I would be kind of thinking about doing the under on that because, again, like I was saying earlier, it seems like he's just not very involved at all. He's not really a key piece of the game plan, but he is out there all the time, and that is a bit concerning because all it does take is like 2-3 catches, and then boom, you're done for.
All right, Terry. We got some questions coming in. Head to head on DK. Would you go with Juszczyk or Jermichael Hasty?
I assume we're talking about in the util spot here, right?
Yes,
I can't imagine we're talking about in the captain spot. So I'm just going to pull up the old optimal lineup right here, and we're talking about Juszczyk or who was the other one? Hasty. I assume it's going to be Hasty. I assume we're getting Hasty. If we're just looking for safety in like a head-to-head, I would just book Hasty there. We're getting him much more frequently optimal. He's around 15% optimal. He's around the same kind of ownership, so it's not a leverage situation if you're talking about head-to-head there, but yeah, I think it's Hasty.
All right. How are you feeling head to head? We'll jump over to Nick, but then Terry, you can answer.
You meant head to head between those two. You meant those two players, running backs. I thought you meant head to head like DFS.
Sorry.
That's what I thought you meant too.
Sorry. Pick those two. A 1v1.
It would depend on what's the rest. Yeah, it would depend on how different the rest of that lineup is at that point for me. Then, if you're differentiated, or if you can spend the salary, because Juszczyk is a lot more expensive. I think it makes sense to go to Hasty there if you're differentiated in other spots. If you need to claw a little leverage, it's not like you get a lot of leverage by going to Juszczyk, so it's probably going to be Hasty anyway. Now that I'm seeing the whole picture here, so yeah, stick with the same answer. But now I fully understood the questions. it's a Hasty.
All right, 1v1 Wentz versus Garoppolo.
Wentz versus Garoppolo. That's a great question. I would probably lean with Garoppolo in this situation. I think with Garoppolo, I think he has the better grouping of wide receivers potentially for him to succeed. Again, I don't love the running backs there, so I think it's entirely possible that he has a solid game. My biggest worry that comes with Jimmy Garoppolo is something that we haven't really discussed yet, is the fact that what if they get on like the 5-yard line and they just magically throw Trey Lance back into the game? Like, it seems like that's something that's entirely possible. So I'm flip-flopping my answer. We're going with Carson Wentz.
I like the late change up there.
So probably wouldn't be Trey Lance, who's out tonight, but it could be.
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. You know what?
It could be Nate Sudfeld. We get the spirit. We get the gist of it, though. He was my number 11th pick, or my number 11th in my bottom 10. Yeah, I went to 11 there, Terry, as well. My question was, does Halloween come early? because we have seen these sorts of things happen before. Sudfeld has played. He spent 5 years, played four different seasons, but I think in just 6 total games for Philadelphia. But he went to college in Indiana. Where's Indianapolis, Indiana? Is there a tie? Revenge again? No. There was a great discussion about revenge earlier today, and clearly Hopkins had revenge in his heart. David Johnson didn't seem to, though. I wonder why. He's on the worst team now. All right, so kind of neither here nor there. I've got to upload my lineups. Can you guys, do either of you guys have the chat up? We can look at our Discord, or we can look at our other chat. Throw some questions around. I'm just going to quickly get this uploaded.
I did see a super chat or two pop up, so let me scroll up real quick, and I'll ask Nick those. Legarian Bridgewater asked, Wentz, Sermon, or Taylor Mack for DK Cash? Wentz and Sermon, or Taylor and Mack in a DK Cash lineup?
Oof, I would probably go. I almost want to say Taylor and Mack. I feel like that's very different, but obviously it's just for a cash game. So I would go ahead and go Wentz and Sermon. I think it is entirely possible that Sermon is the number 2 guy there, and it's not JaMychal Hasty. Even though we've talked up JaMychal Hasty, I do kind of agree with that in some way, but I do think I'd rather have Wentz and Sermon over Taylor and Mack because, again, I don't really see Mack scoring, but I could see Sermon potentially eking his way on into the end zone.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
I think that's definitely reasonable. I am curious at that overall roster construction, though, and just how we arrived at that 2v2, because it's a little bit off for cash games to me, especially considering putting Taylor and Mack, I think, in the same lineup there for a cash game. That's a little bit more of a tournament play to me. So I'm curious about what the rest of that lineup is. I agree with your assessment on which way to go in that situation, but I don't know that that's your best bet for cash. So maybe take a look at that in the optimizer in the last couple of minutes if you can. Taking a look, let's see if we've got any other super chats. I'm not seeing any other super chats there. I'll jump over to the premium Discord here for a minute, see what's going on in there. How's it going, everybody? We've got a few screenshots. Nobody asking questions with words, just taking pictures of their lineups and submitting them.
Those are great.
Nick, let me ask you, if you're, we didn't talk a lot about the defenses, but we've got the opportunity to roster these defenses all over the board. Are you going to any of the defenses in either a flex, or are you interested in a defense captain on the DK slate?
I would be somewhat in. Oh, sorry, you can go.
I was just going to say, I'm not really interested in the captain defense. Both these teams are going to have a running lean towards them. So there's just not as scoop and score is harder to get than a pick six. Of course, anything can happen, strip sack, something like that. But to me, it just feels like we may not get there on the score that we might need. So I'm anti defenses in the captain spot. I think they're absolutely viable in the flex spot.
Yeah, I was going to say
what we've seen. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I don't think I've ever once played a defense in the captain spot. That's just not kind of my thought process. But if this game does turn into the monsoon that people like to talk about a little bit, then maybe the defenses are very viable. But if it is a monsoon, then you also don't want to be pivoting at all into kickers, which is an interesting spot because I always do like putting some kickers in my lineups, even though I don't love either of these kickers, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. And I don't love the situation for kickers, and they just come up less viable just, over time. It's short sample like we've talked about a lot, but it's not an ideal play. We do have a couple of questions that popped up in Discord, so I'll throw them at you, Nick. They're asking Mo Alley Cox or Nyheim Hines in single entry in a lineup that has Jonathan Taylor in the captain spot. Since he said captain, I'll assume it's DK.
Okay, I would definitely lean Mo Alley Cox. To me, it does really seem like they are kind of phasing out Nyheim Hines a little bit more and more every single week in favor of using Jonathan Taylor more. Jonathan Taylor's been seeing more receptions. That was something I kind of worried about a lot going into the fantasy football season, obviously different than DFS, but just kind of coming to the standpoint that I was a little bit worried about Jonathan Taylor's usage in the receiving game. He seems to be seeing a lot more usage. So I would lean with Mo Alley Cox, like we talked about a little bit earlier. Jack Doyle, he's still out there. He's very much a part of the Colts, but he's not really seeing those targets. And with how many touchdowns Mo Alley Cox has been scoring recently, I love him this week. And I would be not very shocked if he found his way into the end zone. So I like Cox.
Nice. Hey, real quick, I'm going to call out another thing that I saw in the premium Discord here. Our guy, Darren, who goes by Jojo Boo Boo, I believe is how we're saying that. It's kind of small on my screen here, but he knocked down a nice tournament on DK today in the afternoon slate and the main slate. Took down 15 grand, won the tournament. He doesn't have our logo in his shot, or he'd be winning himself a free month here. Maybe if he changes it up real quick, sends me a screenshot and tweets it out, maybe we'll be generous and give him one. But congrats, Darren. That's an awesome job there, buddy. I appreciate you calling that to my attention while we're on the show there. And guys, that's what you get out of the site. I'm sure he's using the tools and content there because he's saying thank you and he's sending us the screenshot. Got another question. Favorite non-Debo captain on DraftKings? He's leaning Mitchell or Taylor, but it sounds like he's willing to be convinced. Who's your favorite non-Debo captain on DK before we finish up?
Probably Taylor. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
I agree with that. That was an easy one. We get nice. He's the second highest probable at the top scorer position. He's the fifth most highest frequently optimal looking at the DK slate. Slightly negatively leveraged, but I think it just makes a ton of sense if you're not going to Debo. Go to the next most likely guy to score a bunch, not a bunch of touchdowns, but score you a touchdown and maybe grab you some yards tonight, which is probably going to be enough in this kind of an ugly game. Hey, Mac, you get your lineups in?
No, I'm having some issues here. I can answer questions. I have to.
What time is a lock, though?
I mean, is lock 8:15 or 8:20?
I think it's 8:20. We have this issue every week. We never know when the game starts.
Yeah, I just can't look at the chat screen. I can talk.
Yeah, no problem then. I thought it was 8:15. That was what was on the schedule. But yeah, I'm perfectly happy to talk shop for a few more minutes. That's great. Everybody's still here hanging out. So let's see. Looks like Darren with his message of winning 15 grand also happened to advance to level 1 in Discord. So congratulations on that too. That's a big feather in your cap there.
Number one.
Yeah. Everybody out there who's wondering if you're in YouTube chat, we are going to open up the Discord at some point to the general public. Right now it's the premium members only, but there's going to be a little section in there to replicate the experience, the fun that everybody has in YouTube chat. We're going to have that going on in Discord, but really what you get behind the scenes when you sign up at the site, you get access to all the different premium channels. We've got channels for every sport, for DFS, for sports betting, for season long. We're doing all kinds of stuff in there, office hours. So get behind the paywall, guys. I encourage you to check it out. And if it sounds like I'm just kind of vamping and stalling for time and plugging something there, it's because I don't have a good question to throw at you. Somebody asks, okay, so Shellers B asks, I guess it's in a vacuum, no site specified, just in a total vacuum. Jimmy or Wentz, who do you like better? Nick.
On me or EMAC here?
Me? You.
All right. So we're going with Wentz still, right? That was a question. Wentz or Jimmy? Yeah, we're going to go with Wentz. Again, now I'm not too worried about Trey Lance because apparently he's out, and for some reason that just went right over my head. It was like an airplane joke. You get that one. That was funny for all the dads out there. That was a good one. I know. That was funny.
Nice. Solidly done.
But yeah, I'd go with Wentz. I'm pretty comfortable starting Wentz this game. The only issue is what happens if this is a Jonathan Taylor stomping like no other, which could be possible. But I'm going to go with Carson Wentz. And again, we kind of talked about him earlier about how just safe he has been recently.
Yeah, and in a clean weather situation, I love that, and I'm with you in the call there between the two of them. And I think it's totally viable on the board. The one thing that concerns me in the back of my mind, letting that weather narrative and everything creep in, is are they going to be throwing the ball if they're down in the red zone, or are they just going to be trying to pound the ball in and consider it kind of a safe play if they just have to book the field goal in that situation? And I think a lot of times they are. I just think there's not going to be a lot of risk taken in this game if it's the weather situation that we're thinking. So that takes a little bit off of both quarterbacks for me, just in terms of the touchdown upside. But I agree, if we're deciding between the two, I think that's the way I would lean there. Taking a look at the rest of the YouTube questions here. Not a lot going on in the YouTube channels. Garoppolo over Sanu or Sermon in GPP.
Sanu or Sermon?
Low cost dart throw.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Sanu, if I'm being honest with you. I think there's an entirely chance that Sermon may get. There's also a chance that the problem with Sermon is I feel like I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was the lead back on the team any given week. I also wouldn't be surprised if he does nothing and Kyle Juszczyk ends up scoring a touchdown like we've talked about earlier. So that's kind of the tough spot there that we're in. I would go with Sanu, though. I think he has a decent amount of upside, especially if Ayuk is still locked in that doghouse.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Just not finding all that many questions around here. Everybody's being shy tonight. Usually we just get bombarded with questions.
Everyone's hiding away.
Stuff. I love that we got a winning screenshot in here. That wasn't too bad. I'm sure there's some other ones out there. So everybody remember that we do have that Awesemo promo going on. I was joking with Darren, but if you hit something, you land in the top 3 in a contest with 5,000 people or more. That's going to earn you a free month if you've got the Awesemo avatar in your little account screenshot there, or a little whatever they call that.
Do I get one then?
Yeah, you can get
I came in second today.
Let's put you on the board. Nice.
There you go. We'll put you in the Awesemo Hall of Fame. Just
tag tweet that out. HOF. Yeah, where do you Awesemo
I tweeted HOF.
It out. There you go. So you're in the Hall of Fame officially. You don't get anything free. You work here, but you're in the Hall of Fame. Congrats.
No, I'll count it as getting it for free in my head.
All right. we are right up to lock there. Thank you for covering for me, guys. I did get my lineups in. I appreciate that. Fortunately, I built out all the rules and I had everything there. It's just that those last minutes where you're trying to I was trying to save the lineup we built, so I didn't override it like I did last week and all that other fun stuff. But yeah, we had a nice little show there. We appreciate everybody coming in. Please do hit that like button on the way out. We have all sorts of content coming up again tomorrow. Let's look at our one-stop shop and see who is on deck first. That is going to be Josh. Oh, of course, it's Josh in the Process Show. He goes live on YouTube at 6:30 in the morning. We all hoist our coffees. Mine is iced naturally because I don't like hot beverages, but I'm watching on my computer while I'm getting the workday started. But he's in there at 6:30 breaking down all the games, answering some questions, just showing how he thinks how the rotations are changing out. It's a really good learning show. He gets 300-400 concurrent viewers in there. It's pretty impressive that many people are up, but it's just nice to have on in the background as you're getting your day going. 9 o'clock we have the NFL strategy show. It's going to be Laffy and Matt Gajeski that will be breaking down Monday Night Football. And then we have 3 other NFL shows. We have the Yahoo Live Before Lock NFL show. We've got the Deeper Dive for basketball tomorrow night. That's going to be from 5 to 6. From 6 to 7, we have NBA Live Before Lock. And then we're going to switch back to NFL and go for NFL Live Before Lock up to the 8:20 or 8:15, whatever the kickoff is.
It's 8:15 tomorrow.
We'll see on the schedule. They have it as 8:20. So.
No, they've reversed us. Yeah, let's blame Chris. I'll go message him after this. I'll go yell at him.
But again, we have 9. It looks like 9 hours of shows tomorrow, so we got you covered wall to wall. There's going to be another three videos on demand appearing tomorrow. Plus, Josh will have his contenders video for Monday Night Football.
We're going to have more hours of show tomorrow than I'm going to get sleep tonight. That's not bad.
We're becoming a real network here, But thank you, Terry and Nick, for joining me. It's a lot of fun here having the 3-man booth, especially with all the many moving parts we have. Thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring the show. Reminder, you can go out there and use the promo code Awesemo. They will match you up to your first $100 deposit. That money comes out first when you go into their contest. It's not a drip bonus or anything like that. It's one of the best bonuses out there. And then tomorrow night at midnight, promo code Curry ends. But right now you can get 1 week of everything Awesemo has to offer, all premium, all sports, all tools for half off by using the promo code Curry. That expires tonight. You're crazy if you don't get in behind the paywall. With that, gamers, good luck.